You're in a tent. A thin sheet of nylon is the only thing separating you from a forest full of animals that could kill you before you even woke up. Lions, bears, wolves, leopards, creatures that can hear your heartbeat from across a clearing and see perfectly in pitch darkness. And yet every single morning you wake up, untouched. The question is why? Think about what you actually are in that moment. You're unconscious, slow, quiet, unable to fight back or run. By every biological definition, you are just meat the easiest kind. You'd expect predators to treat a campsite like an all-you-can-eat buffet. They almost never do. And the reason isn't one tidy explanation. It's several layered ones stacked on top of each other. And together they describe something like an invisible agreement between humans and the wild one that goes back further than civilization itself. Let's start with the part that sounds like an ego trip, but is actually just biology. You are terrifying. Not you personally, you, right now, are probably harmless. But humans as a species are genuinely, deeply frightening to predators. And it has nothing to do with how we look. We don't have claws, we're not fast, we can't see in the dark. On paper, we're a pretty unimpressive animal. And yet, a 2017 study out of Santa Cruz played recordings of ordinary human voices near mountain lions. The lions fled in the vast majority of cases at a rate far higher than their response to a control sound like frogs. These are animals capable of dragging a full-grown deer up a hillside. They heard people talking and ran. In many cases, they took far longer to return to a kill and cut their feeding time roughly in half, which is an enormous cost for a predator that calorie debt doesn't get refunded. And they paid it anyway, because being near humans was apparently worse than being hungry. That result matches what biologists have documented across continents. Lions in Kruger National Park move less in areas with more human activity. Tigers in India give villages a wide berth even inside prime habitat. Jaguars in the Amazon have shifted their movement patterns to avoid us. These aren't animals that are physically incapable of attacking. They're animals that have decided at a species level over thousands of generations that we're not worth the risk. And the reason is brutal. We've been hunting large predators so long and so effectively that we've literally reshaped their genetics. The lions and wolves that got too close to human camps got killed. The ones that kept their distance survived and passed that caution down. Over thousands of generations, caution became instinct. So when a leopard picks up your scent at night, a very old alarm goes off, not a conscious thought, just an inherited signal. Be careful, don't engage, move on. Now let's talk about your smell, because you've probably never thought about it. You're surrounded by other humans constantly, so you've normalized it completely. But to a predator with a nose that's 10 to 100,000 times more sensitive than yours, depending on the species, you're broadcasting an enormous, strange chemical signal. Bears have a sense of smell estimated at roughly 7 times stronger than a bloodhound's. Wolves can detect scent from nearly 2 miles away under the right conditions. Big cats have a specialized organ in the roof of their mouth, the Jacobson's organ, that essentially lets them taste the air and read chemical information at a level we can't really imagine. When one of these animals encounters a sleeping human, it's getting flooded with olfactory data, and a lot of that data is just wrong. You smell like synthetic fabric, processed food, soap, sunscreen, insect repellent, a cocktail with no analog anywhere in the natural world. Underneath all of that, you smell like a primate, which is something, but it's not what these animals evolved to hunt. A predator's hunting instinct isn't a generic urge to kill things that move. It's a finely tuned system calibrated to specific prey. A wolf's predatory response triggers off the movement patterns of ungulates. A lion's strike mechanism activates on the shape, speed, and scent of animals it's hunted thousands of times. You don't fit the pattern. You're not in the system. You're an anomaly. And anomalies trigger caution in most predators, not aggression. Then there's fire, which might be the single most underrated thing humans ever figured out. Fear of fire is close to universal across land animals, and it isn't learned, it's innate. Animals raised in labs who've never seen fire in their lives still show avoidance behavior at the smell of smoke. Humans have been sleeping next to fire for somewhere between 1 and 2 million years. And a campfire doesn't just keep you warm. It broadcasts a signal into the dark. Something dangerous controls this light. Stay away. Predators have been receiving that message for so long, it doesn't even need decoding anymore. It just triggers avoidance automatically. We figured that out before farming, before writing, before basically everything else. Here's the biggest myth movies have sold us for decades. Predators are not reckless. This matters more than it sounds. The image of the apex predator as a fearless killing machine that attacks anything within range is pure fiction. A lion doesn't have health insurance. A wolf doesn't get sick days. One serious injury, a broken leg, a deep bite, a damaged eye, can mean a slow death by starvation. Because in the wild, injuries either heal on their own while the animal somehow still has to hunt to eat, or they don't heal at all. So every decision a predator makes about engaging with something is a genuine survival calculation. Is the caloric value of this target worth the risk of injury? Is this prey familiar enough that I know how it'll behave? A sleeping human fails that calculation in several ways. First, unfamiliarity. A predator is most confident attacking prey. It knows intimately it's watched a zebra run hundreds of times, knows its blind spots, knows how it kicks in a panic. It has no idea how an unpredictable human will react. If startled, we might wake up screaming, we might have tools nearby. We might have other humans nearby who respond. That uncertainty is a massive red flag for an animal trying to minimize risk. Second, size. Standing humans are tall and upright, and that bipedal posture itself reads as a threat display to other animals. It's what gorillas do to intimidate, what bears do when they want to look dangerous. A creature that walks around like that as its default mode reads as inherently assertive. Even asleep, our silhouette doesn't say easy meal. And third, and maybe most important of all, why bother? A healthy predator in a healthy ecosystem almost always has an easier, more familiar option nearby, going after something strange, unknown, and potentially dangerous when there's a perfectly good deer or rabbit in the vicinity just doesn't make survival math work out. Here's something that almost never comes up. Your sleep isn't as deep as you think, and this is genuinely one of the more astonishing things about human biology. We experience sleep in cycles, dropping down into deep slow-wave sleep, and then coming back up into lighter stages, including REM, where the brain is actually quite active. And researchers have found that during those lighter stages, your brain remains surprisingly responsive to the environment. External sounds still get processed, and unfamiliar noises are far more likely to break through into awareness than familiar ones. Scientists call this the Sentinel function of sleep, the idea that even while resting, animals, humans included, maintain a partial watch on the environment. A twig snapping loudly nearby, the sound of something large moving through brush, a shift in air pressure that comes with something approaching. These things pull you toward waking faster than you'd expect. This isn't an accident. The humans in our evolutionary history who slept too deeply to notice a threat were more likely to simply not wake up at all. The lighter sleepers, the ones who could go from unconscious to on their feet in seconds, were the ones who survived and reproduced. Over hundreds of thousands of years, human sleep got tuned to stay light enough to respond to threats. We sleep lighter and in shorter cycles than most large mammals. Partly because our evolutionary legacy assumed there would always be something in the dark worth waking up for. So while you feel completely helpless when you're unconscious, you're actually running a fairly sophisticated early warning system in the background. Not perfect, not foolproof, but present. And then there's the group factor. Humans almost never actually sleep alone in the wild. We travel and camp in groups, and predators understand group dynamics deeply because their prey forms groups too. A predator doesn't just attack prey, it hunts for separation, for the isolated individual cut off from the herd. A camp full of sleeping humans is a group, and a group where one person waking up and shouting will likely wake everyone else. That risk of a hunt turning into chaotic group defense is exactly the kind of scenario predators are evolved to avoid. Now, an honest note, because this wouldn't be responsible without it, none of this makes you untouchable. The attacks that do happen, and they do happen, follow a consistent pattern. They involve circumstances where the normal rules have already broken down. An injured predator that can't hunt its normal prey. A starving one whose habitat and usual food sources have vanished. One that's lost its inherited wariness because tourists have been feeding it, or it's had too much contact with people. This happens disturbingly fast. Or one that's simply old and past its physical prime, no longer able to catch what it used to. The lions of Tsavo in Kenya are the most famous example. In 1898. 2 male lions killed somewhere between 35 and 135 railway workers over about 9 months, with the exact number disputed and the legend growing in the retelling. What often gets left out is that these were unusual lions. Both were maneless, which is atypical, and one had severe dental damage that likely made its normal prey much harder to hunt. The Champawat tiger blamed for an estimated 436 deaths across India and Nepal in the early 1900s, was later found by hunter Jim Corbett to have been shot in the mouth at some earlier point, shattering 2 of its canine teeth. It could no longer hunt its natural prey effectively, and injury combined with habitat encroachment pushed it toward the only prey that was consistently available and physically manageable. Almost every documented case of a large predator attacking humans at rest follows the same shape: something broke. The normal calculation changed. Inherited caution got overridden by desperation, which means the rule holds almost universally in healthy, intact ecosystems, with healthy predators, where humans haven't scrambled the normal signals by leaving food out, approaching wildlife, or skipping the campfire because it seemed unnecessary. There's one last layer here, and it might be the most mind-bending part of the whole thing. We've been so effective at making the natural world afraid of us that it's now causing problems we never anticipated. A 2019 Santa Cruz follow-up study went further than the puma fleeing research. It showed that fear cascading through the entire food web in ways that are difficult to fully control. When pumas avoid areas where humans are active, the deer in those areas face reduced predation pressure, and deer populations in those zones increase, which overgrazes vegetation. Meanwhile, medium-sized predators coyotes, bobcats, foxes also reduce their presence near humans, which means the rodent populations they normally keep in check start expanding too. Everything shifts. And it shifts because of us, because of our presence, because the fear we've generated over millennia radiates outward through the ecosystem like a signal. We change the behavior of every predator layer on a continent without ever directly interacting with most of those animals, just by being there. Just by being the thing evolution told them to be afraid of. One species, one inherited fear, rippling across the entire living world. The most dangerous animal on the planet is the one that figured out fire before it figured out almost anything else, the one that's been shaping ecosystems not just through what it eats, but through what it makes other things afraid to eat. The one that sleeps light, travels in groups, and carries a couple 100,000 generations of successful survival encoded into its instincts. That's you. That's what you are. So the next time you're lying in a tent, listening to the sounds of the dark beyond a thin nylon wall, and you feel that flicker of ancient anxiety, that's fine. That feeling kept your ancestors alive. But the thing outside the tent isn't coming in. It already knows better.